You've been told that if you follow the rules, invest wisely, and play the long game, your financial future is secure. But what if that security is an illusion? What if the entire system is built on a foundation so fragile that it could shatter overnight without warning? Today, we'll break down the day America's banks stopped trusting each other, exposing a hidden chapter in financial history that reveals how greed and fear can bring the world to its knees. But before we start, if you enjoy videos that uncover the secret architecture of finance and power, make sure you subscribe because we have a lot more to explore together. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what was the first major financial event you remember living through? I'm curious to see the different perspectives in our community. Let's start with a question. Why is it that the global financial system, with all its complex algorithms and supposed safeguards, came to a grinding halt in a single day? The answer isn't just about bad investments or a housing bubble. It's about the complete and sudden collapse of the most crucial element in finance, trust. In September 2008, the world watched as Lehman Brothers, a 158-year-old titan of Wall Street, filed for bankruptcy. This wasn't just another company going under. It was a cornerstone of the global financial system turning to dust. For years, the world's biggest banks had been dancing to a music of their own making, fueled by complex financial instruments called mortgage-backed securities and collateralized debt obligations, or CDOs. They took risky subprime mortgages loans given to people who were unlikely to pay them back and bundled them into what they sold as safe, AA-rated investments. It was a machine that turned lead into gold, and everyone on Wall Street was getting rich. The problem was, it wasn't gold. It was a ticking time bomb. The banks knew it, but as long as the music was playing, they kept dancing. They lent money to each other, they bought each other's toxic assets, and they insured each other's bets through credit default swaps. The entire system was a web of interconnected promises, all built on the assumption that everyone would be able to pay their debts. They trusted each other not because they were virtuous, but because they believed the game would never stop. They believed that even if things went wrong, the government would never let a giant like Lehman fail. But on September 15, 2008, the U.S. government did exactly that. They let Lehman go. The music stopped. And in that deafening silence, every bank on Wall Street looked at its neighbor and saw not a partner, but a potential corpse. The panic was instantaneous and absolute. Suddenly, no one knew who was solvent and who was about to follow Lehman into oblivion. The complex web of trust that had held the global economy together for decades evaporated in a matter of hours. This led to a phenomenon as a credit freeze. The lifeblood of the modern economy is credit, the ability for businesses, banks, and individuals to borrow money. Banks lend to each other overnight in what's called the interbank market to ensure they have enough cash to operate. It's the fundamental plumbing of the financial system. But after Lehman's collapse, that plumbing froze solid. Banks refused to lend to one another, even for a few hours. Why loan $1 billion to another bank if you were unsure it would even exist the next morning? The risk was too high. Everyone hoarded their cash, terrified of being the next one to fall. The clearest indicator of this breakdown was the LIBOR, the London Interbank Offered Rate. This is the average interest rate that major global banks charge for short-term loans to one another. For years, it had been a stable, boring number. But in the days after Lehman's failure, the Libor spread, a key measure of credit risk in the banking sector, spiked to unprecedented levels. It was the system's red alert, a flashing signal that trust had completely vanished. It was every bank for itself. The institutions designed to move money had stopped moving it. This wasn't just a Wall Street problem. It was a Main Street catastrophe. When banks stopped lending to each other, they stopped lending to everyone. Small businesses couldn't get loans to make payroll. Large corporations couldn't get credit to finance their operations. The gears of the real economy began to grind to a halt. It was a full-blown liquidity crisis, a heart attack for the global financial system. The world was staring into the abyss of a second Great Depression. Faced with a complete systemic meltdown, the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government were forced to intervene on a scale never before imagined. They had no choice. They initiated the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or TARP, a massive bailout fund designed to inject capital directly into the failing banks. The Fed flooded the market with emergency liquidity, essentially becoming the lender of last resort when no one else would. They were nationalizing the risk while privatizing the profits that had been made for years. They bailed out the very institutions whose recklessness had caused the crisis, arguing that they were too big to fail. In a world built on ambition and the illusion of perpetual growth, the day America's banks stopped trusting each other uncovers this hidden chapter in our financial history, a story of systemic greed, institutional failure, and crucial lessons the world seems determined to forget. From the chaotic trading floors of Wall Street to the closed-door meetings in Washington, where the fate of the global economy was decided, this narrative explores the spectacular rise, the terrifying fall, and the silent lingering consequences that permanently changed the flow of money. Every moment of this crisis built towards a painful revelation that the decisions made in the pursuit of unimaginable profit had reshaped entire economies, destroyed lives, and fundamentally altered the meaning of risk and value. The foundation of our financial world was not solid ground, but a fragile layer of trust that could be shattered by fear. As the truth of 2008 unfolded, one question echoed. Through the empty halls of fallen banks and in the minds of millions who lost their homes and savings, did we ever really master money, or did money in its most abstract and dangerous form completely master us?